Hi, good evening, everyone. On behalf of organizing team, I, Paramjit Singh Ahuja, along with my colleague, Mr. Mohit Kapil, once again welcome each one of you present here today. I congratulate everyone to be a part of this mega 5 day affair. Today is the fifth day and is the final day of this BFSI conclave, and we are delighted with your participation throughout. And I'm sure that we have lived up to the expectations of each one of you. Moving on with today's evening, I am pleased to announce that we have Dr. Pankaj Trivedi ji with us as today's speaker. Today's session is going to be an integrative session on trends and skill development in BFSI industry through and post COVID 2019, which happened to be our theme throughout the conclave. At the end of the session, we are going to take up your questions with Dr. Pankaj Trivedi ji, and I'm sure he is going to add a lot of value with his experiences today. Now, let me call upon Dr. Sangeeta Trehan ji to welcome and introduce Dr. Pankaj Trivedi ji to the audience. Dr. Sangeeta Trehan ji is Dean Academics SDIIT and Chairperson and Convener of this conclave. Thanks, and over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Param, for the wonderful introduction of the speaker and welcome. On behalf of SDIIT, I welcome you all to this fifth and final day of this 5-day BFSI conclave FDP, which began last Saturday. Like the co-convener, Mr. Param has already informed, we have a very distinguished speaker, Dr. Pankaj Trivedi, today, who has joined us from Mumbai. And I'm pleased to introduce him to you. Dr. Pankaj Trivedi is a professor and the chairperson of finance and law at the celebrated KJ Somaiya Institute of Management, Mumbai. He's a PhD in finance from University of Mumbai. He has a work experience of 20 years with banking industry and 15 years in academics at postgraduate level. He's a recognized PhD guide with Somaiya Vidyavihar University, University of Mumbai, and SNDT Women's University. He's a regular visiting faculty at DHBW University, Stuttgart, Germany. And I'm also pleased to note that Dr. Trivedi is also a member of the Academic Advisory Council of Satyug Darshan Institute of Engineering and Technology. So over to you, Dr. Trivedi.
Yes, good evening to all of you. And at the outset, I would like to thank Satyug Darshan Institute for giving me this opportunity to share my thought, my experience, and whatever little I know with the students, with the faculties, and other interested people. So I thank SDIET for this opportunity. And I also thank Mr. S.K. Sachdeva, who is the chairman of the institute, as well as Dr. Sangeeta Trehan. I know Madam Sangeeta Trehan, a couple of times she has also visited to our institute for various academic reasons. Dr. Deshmukh, and of course, Professor Paramjit Singh, because right from beginning he is in touch with me for fixing this talk and other things. Yeah? So thank you all very much, first of all. Yeah, and welcome all the faculties, students, and other interested people to this particular talk. It's a short talk on, as Mr. Paramjit has already introduced, that we were discussing on the topic since last 4 days. So it's a sort of a summarizing and with the focus on what kind of skill set the students need to face this new challenge. So I will start my presentation, and for that purpose, I would like to share the screen. Just give me a moment. I hope all of you are able to see the screen. All of you are
Yes.
able to see?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we are.
Yeah. So as the theme is about the COVID, so as you know that this is one of the big problems that not only our country but the entire world is facing right now. And the consequences and the impact of COVID is far reaching. It has got a large implication and large consequences, right? It is not only on economy, but various other aspects as well. So my focus will be first, we will have some sort of a background. I will create a background and then we will start discussing about impact on the economy, impact on the banking sector, impact on NBFC, impact on insurance. Of course, I know that all this is already covered in detail by the other speaker, but then my job is to summarize again everything. Yeah. So if you look at this slide, the consequences of COVID, as I said, is far reaching. And to my mind, the most important and the serious impact or the effect is on the human life. Because whatever we talk about GDP or whatever we talk about employment or people's income or other things, but the severe and the serious impact is on the human life. So all of you know that this is a problem which is spread across the world and different governments. People are fighting their best to control this, and so many lives are affected because of this problem. If you talk about only India, then all of you must be knowing the latest figure is we already touch around 17,000 deaths, and nearly 585,000 people are affected by this particular problem. At global level, the figure is much larger. It is 1 crore. Number of people affected are 1 crore, and the death is around 530,000. So this is a very severe impact to my mind of the COVID. And when to this extent it is affecting the human life, naturally it is going to affect the other economic aspects, particularly GDP, gross domestic product. Yeah. So that also, I'm sure you must be keeping yourself up to date. Different agencies, different bodies like IMF, World Bank. If you talk about our country, Reserve Bank of India, Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Trade, various other authorities and agencies, they have all agreed and they have given different estimation that severely it is going to affect our gross domestic product. Yeah. So if you look at some of the statistics, you will get an idea. Let's see if we talk about January 2020 to March 20, then what you find is during that quarter, our GDP growth was 5%. But from April to June, if you look at the figure, it is minus 9%. So if you take into account that 5% plus minus 9, then it will be much bigger figure. So this is how it has got severe impact on GDP, gross domestic product. And as you know that when something affects GDP, it will definitely affect the employment, people's income, and government finance. So that also is a very serious impact. So many people are losing the job. So many people are not getting the job, and existing people are losing the job simply because the industry, the business activity, all that is shut down due to this compulsory lockdown. And there is no option except to go for the lockdown if you want to come out of this pandemic. So on the employment, it has affected very severely. If you look at the first quarter, I mean January to March quarter, the unemployment rate in India was nearly 7.5%. But the May figure, if you look at the May figure of unemployment, it has touched 24%. So that is also a very severe impact of Corona and COVID. And when the employment is affected, naturally income of the people will also be affected. because they have lost their job, they could not get the job. So immediate impact is on the income of the people, and they find it extremely difficult to satisfy even their basic necessities. You are already familiar with the problem of labor, migrant labor, and various other issues that they are facing. So that is yet another severe effect of COVID. Coming to effect on government finance and government policy. As you know that today, almost every country is having government which is believing in welfare state philosophy. So it becomes the responsibility of the government to take care of these affected people. And that's the reason government is to came out with different types of scheme, different types of support, and that will increase the pressure on the government finance. I'm sure you all must be familiar with Atmanirbhar package, which the government has announced in the month of April. Similarly, the very recently, just yesterday also, one more package was announced. So all this will have a severe impact on our fiscal balance and the fiscal position of the country. Not only that, to face this crisis, government has to came out with different types of policies, and the situation is such that government has to change the policies quite often, taking into account the situation that is developing and the other problems that the government is facing, whether it is policy relating to trade, policy relating to industry, policy relating to education, policy relating to health. Any policy you take the example of, what you must have found in last couple of months, that there is a constant change in the policy. So this is also one of the severe impact of COVID-19 to my mind. Now, let us talk about impact on GDP in bit more detail. Why? There is a reason, because you know when the GDP is affected, definitely it is going to affect the financial market. Definitely it is going to affect the banking sector. And because of the banking sector, again, it is going to affect the GDP. So it is like a cause and effect kind of thing, you know. So I have given one slide dedicated to impact on GDP. And this slide will explain to you in simple way that how the GDP is affected because of the COVID problem. As you know that GDP is determined by these four components: consumption, investment, government activities, and balance of payment. Yeah. So because of this COVID-19, all these four components are affected very severely. And the reason is very simple, because there is restriction. There is restriction on interaction, there is restriction on movement of the people. Now imagine when there is restriction on interaction, when there is a restriction on movement, obviously consumption will be affected. If you want to buy something, you have to go to the market. If you want to invest, you have to go to the financial market. You have to go for acquiring the factors of production. So when the restriction is put up on interaction with the people and the movement of the people, obviously these kind of components are affected, and in turn it will affect the demand and supply. So students of economics and students of finance are well versed with this. For any business or for any economy, it is the demand and supply which is very critical. And demand and supply is affected because of this type of situation and restriction. All of you perhaps agree with me that today we are living in a situation where if we have to talk to somebody face to face, then also we get scared. So in such situation, definitely the demand is affected, the supply is affected, and in turn it will affect consumption and investment. Even the government activity is also affected. If you look at the collection of tax by the government in the last 3 months, you will get to know about these kind of reduction in the activities of business, and in turn government revenue, in turn government activity. Similarly, it has also impacted our export import. So balance of trade is also affected. So all this will have collective effect on the GDP, and this is how the COVID is a serious problem at global level. Now, when we talk about GDP, naturally it is made up of production from different sectors of the economy. So this slide will give you an idea that on which sector, how this pandemic is affected. So this slide, you can see here, there are two parts. One is those industries where the impact is negative, and a couple of industries where there is a positive impact also. So to come first to the negative impact, then the first negative impact, what is observed is on energy and power sector. So there is a 20% fall in the power demand because of the lockdown and because of this corona effect. Naturally, because the industries are shut down, the business is shut down, the educational institutions are shut down. And because of that, there is a reduction in the demand for energy. There is reduction in the demand for power. Even the refineries are also not working at full capacity. Why? Because there is restriction on transport, restriction on movement. So definitely there will be fall in the demand for fuel. So this is one of the severe impact. Probably some of you must be knowing. One of the indicator for development of a country is per capita energy and power consumption. So when there is a fall in the demand for power, energy, and these kind of power sector and energy sector, definitely it will show that the country's per capita income is also affected. Second important industry which has got a negative impact, and that according to the statistics and the reports that are available, is the real estate and construction. Now, all of you know that under real estate and construction, it's a labor intensive industry. So there is a need for labor. There is a huge need for labor. And again, because of restriction on movement, restriction of interaction, naturally this labor could not go to the work. They could not engage themselves into construction industries. And because of that, this sector is also affected. And one of the surveys says that nearly 10% fall in the revenue is noticed in this sector. As far as the retail is concerned, another yet another important sector which has got adverse impact of the coronavirus and the COVID. And here, I'm not talking about the basic necessity, but other than basic necessities like garments, shoes, or jewelry and electronic items, and all those retail is severely affected. And because of that, again, there is an adverse impact on the GDP and in turn adverse impact on the financial market as well, that we will see in the next few slides. Next important sector which has got adverse impact is the travel and hospitality. Again, the same point, there is a restriction on movement. Nobody will dare to go out. Nobody is allowed to go out. And this is not a safe time also to move around. This is not a safe time for going for outing or, visiting different places, hotels, restaurant, all that. And that is the reason the travel and hospitality sector is also affected, and they are also facing around 30% fall in the revenue. Another two important sector is metal and automobile. Now, metal, as I said a few minutes before, is just like energy. What is the per capita energy consumption? Same way, what is per capita metal consumption? That also is one of the indicator for growth and development in the country. So there is a fall in the demand for metals, not only in domestic market, but even in international market, because this is a global phenomenon. So that is another sector which has got very severe impact. Same way, automobile sector is also facing the problem, as you must be knowing that even before COVID, this sector was facing, and the COVID has added fuel to the fire. There is 8.3% fall noticed in this sector. And for automobile sector, the biggest problem today is the stock clearance. They are already having large stocks and they are finding it difficult because this is a time where people will focus mainly on basic necessities, and hardly you will find people who will spend for these luxury items or any discretionary spending. So these are six important sectors which has got very negative and severe negative impact because of the COVID. And if you talk about positive impact, then obviously what you find is health and pharmaceutical, because there is more demand for the products which are produced by this industry, right? The things that is required, the equipments that is required, the medicines, that is required to control this pandemic and to provide different types of treatment to the people. So this is a sector where you find that there is a positive impact, and those who are keeping a track of the stock market, they are also, they will perhaps agree with me that there is a rise in the stock price of many pharmaceutical and health related companies. Similarly, agriculture is yet another sector where the impact is not very severe. And one of the reasons is most of the agricultural activities are taking place in the countryside, in the villages, where the density of the people is very less, and therefore this problem is also less. In big cities like Mumbai or Delhi or Bangalore or somewhere, you will find the problem of corona is very serious because of the density. But in villages or in the rural areas where agriculture activities mostly take place, because of the less population, less density, the impact is relatively less, and there is rise in the agriculture production. So this is one of the positive impact that we have on agriculture sector, and that is a good thing for us. At least we are able to protect fall in our GDP to a large extent because of the agriculture and because of health, pharmaceutical, and of course, one more sector is the online sale. Right? Few minutes before, I was telling you that retail sector is affected, but that was non-essential item. As far as the essential items are concerned, people have started buying online again because there is a restriction on movement of the people, and therefore what you find is there is a surge in the online sale, particularly of FMCG commodities. So this couple of slides will give you a background to understand how this is all going to affect the BFSI sector. That's the reason to create a background or a sort of a basic explanation to understand my further slide. Yeah. So with this background, now I'm coming to BFSI sector. When you talk about banking, financial services, and insurance sector in any country, to my mind, banking sector is the most critical. You talk about financial market. When you talk about BFSI sector, banking sector is most critical. Though there are many finance students, they understand BFSI sector or finance means they understand only stock market. But that is not correct. Finance, financial market or financial sector, rather financial sector in any country is not only stock market, it is not restricted to stock market, but in country like India, it is banking sector which is all the more important. Why? Because if you again look at some of the statistics, you will get an idea. If you look at the private saving, household saving, then nearly 2/3 of the household saving, even today, is parked in the banks. Whenever people have some surplus money, the first thing that comes to their mind is to put that money into the bank. Yeah, the new generation people, the young people, and particularly those people who are staying in a big city like Mumbai, Delhi, etc., they think that no, this is not correct. People will invest in stock market, but let me tell you, less than 10% of the total household saving is there in the stock market, but 2/3 of the household saving is there in the banking sector. So banking sector you can't ignore. Banking sector is very critical for any country of the world. We have also seen 2008 global financial crisis, where when the banks at global level has affected, the entire financial system of various countries has collapsed. So same is the case in India also. So that's the reason banking sector is very critical when you talk about the financial sector of the country. Now, because of this COVID problem, the health of the bank is severely affected and it is under stress. Health of the bank as well as NBFC, non-banking finance companies. In country like India, apart from bank, NBFCs are also playing very critical role, very important role. That also I have put up in one of the slides. So at that time I will discuss in detail. But banks and NBFC both are very critical for lending, very critical for for the country. And the health of the bank and NBFC both are under stress. And this is mainly because of the downfall of the business. As you know that the bank and NBFC's main business is lending. And when there is a downfall of business, naturally they are affected. So the business of MSMEs and business of large corporate, both are affected because of the COVID problem. MSMEs, all of you know, plays very important role as far as our country is concerned. Nearly 30% of the GDP is contributed by MSME in India. So when there is a fall in MSME activity, when there is a fall in the production, when there is fall in the business of this sector, naturally there is an impact on GDP. And these MSMEs are mainly the borrowers from the banks and NBFCs. Now, when their business is not doing well, when their production is affected, when their recovery is an issue, obviously the bank will also come under stress. So this is one of the reasons why the banks are under stress, because of fall in the activities of MSME. And same way, even the large corporates. It is not only MSME, though it is playing important role, but it is large corporate also. As you know that the business is affected all round, and that's the reason even the large corporate is also affected, in turn the bank and the position of the bank is affected. Then why this is so? Why the bank's position is affected and bank's position is came under stress? Because all these corporates, industries, small, large, medium, whatever, they are at present focusing only on the essential operation. As far as the borrowing from banks and NBFCs are concerned, for expansion, for adding activities, for increasing production, it is virtually not there. It is stopped, you know. So why this is so? Because their main focus is on simply essential operation, and many of them are facing even survival problem. Yeah, their focus is on essential operation and maintaining stability. They are not talking about growth. They are not talking about adding production capacity and other stuff. They are talking about how they are able to maintain their position as it is. And as I said, in some of the cases, even survival is an issue. Here also, some of the statistics are available that nearly 61% of the MSMEs that we have in our country, as high as 61%, they are expecting that in the next 2 quarters, their business has to reduce. I mean, they are thinking of reducing the scale. At whatever scale they are working today, they are thinking to reduce their scale because of the severe impact of the coronavirus. And nearly 13% of the MSME, particularly startup, those which are startup, they are on the verge of shutdown. So this kind of severe impact, when the business in the country is having, obviously the banks and the NBFC's position will come under stress. So this is the reason why the banks have faced the problem. Now, let us talk about exact impact on the bank. Couple of slides are here, which will give you idea about what exactly the impact on the bank. So the first and the foremost impact over here is the non-disbursement of loan. All of you know that for a bank, lending is the main business. Of course, investment is also one of the important business. Nowadays, banks are to a large extent depending upon the treasury profit and treasury operations. But even then, if you go by definition, if you talk with respect to India, you know, particularly from Indian perspective, you talk about, then the main business of the bank today is giving loan. And there is no disbursement of loan. So because of this, naturally, the business of the bank is affected, and that is one of the severe impact to my mind. And we already discussed in the earlier slide that why the banks are not able to give the loan, because there are no borrowers. You know, the industries, whether it is a large scale, small scale, they are not approaching the bank for borrowing. Why they are not approaching the bank for borrowing? Because there is no business, there is a slow shutdown, there is a fall in the activities, economic activities. And this is true in domestic as well as international business both. If you look at the international trade, then there also the statistics are available. In the last 3 months, our export and import is affected as high as 50%, you know. And these are the statistics which are all collected from Ministry of Commerce and other reliable sources. So when the international business is affected, when the domestic business is affected, naturally the disbursement of loan is not there from the banks, and the earning of the bank is directly affected because of that. Not only that, another severe impact is on slow recovery. Now, this is also very simple to understand. Those industries we have already borrowed from the bank, now they have to service their borrowing. But when there is no activity, naturally they find it extremely difficult to return the loan to service that debt. And that's the reason probably all of you must be knowing that Reserve Bank of India, Government of India has taken several measures, and moratorium is also given to the borrowers that up to 31st August, they need not worry, they need not return their installment loan in that. And RBI has also instructed banks for their asset classification, taking into account this moratorium and all that stuff. But my worry is once this relaxation will be lifted, after that, what the bank is going to face is there is a rise in the default. Because the business is affecting since last months, so naturally there is bound to be increase in the non-performing assets. All of you are aware of the concept of non-performing assets, and this NPA, according to one estimate, is likely to increase by 2%. All of you know that already our banking sector is facing problem of NPA, and this problem is going to become severe once this moratorium and the relaxation which is given by the Reserve Bank of India will be lifted. If you talk about NPA, the global, you see already, as I said, we have around if you put approximate figure, around 9 to 10% of the loans which are in the books of the banks and NBFCs, they are NPAs, non-performing assets, and this is very high compared to global standard. At global standard, the average is around 1.5 to 1.8%, but in India it is 10%. So this problem is again going to increase because of this slow recovery, because of effect on the business. Not only business, even those who have taken a personal loan, many of them are facing cut in their salary. Many of them are losing the job. So all this is going to lead to increase in the NPA. And that is one of the very severe impact. I'm sure the student of finance must also be knowing that if somebody will ask you the question that what are the couple of or three important problems that Indian banks are facing, then the first thing that will come to your mind is problem of NPA, right? And then you will talk about capital adequacy, and then you will talk about perhaps structural reforms and whatnot. So surge in NPA is one of the severe impact of the bank. And even that also students of finance must be knowing that when there is NPA, it is kind of it's a double-edged sword. It is called double-edged sword. Why? Because your money gets stuck up in the bad loans. Your interest income is also affected because recovery is difficult. And on the other hand, the banks have to make provision. So it will eat away the profit of the bank. Whatever profit that the bank is able to make by other activities, non-funding activities, that profit is also eat away by the non-performing assets because huge amount of provision is to be made. Just a couple of days, I was reading some report, and there was a statistics given. Only Axis Bank, that report was talking about Axis Bank. Axis Bank has planned to make provision because of the COVID problem to the extent of 3,000 crores. Now, 3,000 crores is not a small figure by any standard. Yeah? So the bank will have these kind of problem. One is NPA, second is huge amount of provision they have to make. And in the process, there will be constraint on the capital also. So this is yet another severe impact. Indian banks, they are already facing shortage of capital. I'm sure students must be knowing about capital adequacy ratio and Basel norms and all that stuff. If you want more details, you can ask me the question subsequently. But when your loans, when your books is having bad loans, and when you cannot expand the loan portfolio, in that situation, if you want to come out of that situation and if you want to give more loans, you need to ensure that the asset quality should be good, the assets that you're going to create and in the loans that you're going to give. It should be of good quality, that is one. But before that, you need to have sufficient capital. You know, say, for example, today we are talking about Basel III norms, right? But even Basel II is not fully implemented in India. So capital constraint is one of the severe problems that the bank is facing and going to face further. Now here, let me tell you, as far as the government banks are concerned, public sector banks are concerned, probably they will get capital from the government through budgetary provision, or government will issue bonds, or whatever way, because they are controlled by the government. But private sector bank will definitely going to face the problem of raising the capital, because they have to raise the capital from the market, and the market will be highly volatile. So this is also one of the severe impact on the bank to my mind. Next impact is protecting the asset quality. As I already explained to you that due to NPA problem, the quality of the asset is constantly deteriorating. How to protect the asset quality, how to ensure that the borrower will repay the loan in time, this is a big challenge. So that is yet another important impact the bank will have. And all these factors, rise in NPA and provision and maintaining asset quality, ultimately it is going to increase the credit cost. So according to one estimate, the credit cost is going to increase to 130 basis points. Yeah. And this is particularly, this 130 basis point is calculated keeping in mind the MSME sector. Yeah. So when the credit cost increases, I think I need not tell you this, probably you may be knowing, when the credit cost increases, then the bank will give the fresh loan. That fresh loan will be costly for the borrower. So again, it is going to have some impact on the bank. Yeah. And all these process, ultimately, all these process will also have one more impact, and that is on valuation, on bank valuation. Because the value of the shares of the bank in the market will fall, or whatever valuation model that you are following. There are several models which are available, like Camels and various other models. So all these will have ultimate impact on the bank valuation. So this is also one of the impact on the bank. So this is how banking sector will be under stress in future. Yeah. Now, the question is that, banks are going to face this problem that we have seen. Now, the next challenge for the bank is how to come out of it. What is the way out? What kind of strategy they should adopt, and what kind of support from the government they are getting, so that they will be able to navigate this crisis time. So this slide is talking about what should be the focus area for banks in the current situation or post-COVID situation. So the first and foremost is they have to be very selective while lending. At least initially, they have to be very, very selective while lending. Why? Because as we have seen in the earlier slide, it's a challenge for the bank to maintain quality of the assets. And therefore, they have to be very selective. So they have to focus on those sectors where the impact is positive. We already seen that pharmaceutical sector and healthcare sector is having positive impact, and therefore they should focus on that. Yeah. Second focus should be on MSME. Now, I may sound contradictory because a couple of minutes back, I was talking to you that MSME is facing a lot of problems, but the bank should take initiative to identify strong MSMEs, and banks should start lending to MSMEs. And here I would like to tell you that government is supporting the banks. Yeah? All of you must be knowing the package time to time Government of India has declared in last couple of months. And in that package, there is a loan guarantee to MSME, and various other measures are taken by the Reserve Bank of India and the government. To give you a few more examples, Reserve Bank of India has already reduced CRR. Reserve Bank of India has already reduced repo and even reverse repo. So why it is done? So that the liquidity position of the bank will increase, and banks should start lending to MSME as well as the large scale sector. But focus should be on MSME, because here the recovery is under control. It is bit under control. I'm sorry to say, but if you look at the statistics relating to bank recovery, then you will be able to observe all this. Yeah. So focus should be on the MSME sector. Similarly, the bank should also focus on working capital loan. Yeah. Because for expansion of the capacity, etc., the loan demand for loan will be relatively less. But for working capital, the demand for the loan is likely to be there once this problem is slightly reduced. And otherwise also, if you look at the bank as a business, bank is a money market institution, so they have to focus on short-term loans. So for working capital loan, they have to consider as one of the focus area. And here also, Reserve Bank of India has given several facilities. For example, very recently, those who are keeping themselves up to date with these issues, they must be knowing that very recently, Reserve Bank of India has asked all the banks to recalculate what is known as, there is something called drawing power of the borrower, by reducing the margin. When the borrowers and the industries borrow from the bank is insisting for the margin. So RBI has given instruction to reduce the margin and recalculate that drawing power, with the result that more funds will be flown out into the economy, and there will be a fast recovery from the fall in the business and fall in the economic activities. Yeah? Even MSMEs, if you ask me, they are facing one of the major problem, and that is of recovery. So the demand for working capital loan by MSMEs will always be there. And this is a good opportunity for the banks to tap this particular sector. Yeah? Same way, banks should also focus on some new products, some new avenues, and the new products which are to be developed keeping in mind this environment, some new loan scheme which is suitable to small business, retail business, individuals, even large-scale business. So there is a lot of thinking, research, strategy bank needs to develop to come out with the new products. So that is also one of the focus area to my mind for the banks. Something like COVID insurance. As all of you know that now the bank is not simply a bank in traditional sense, but now all the banks are actually financial supermarket. Today we have concept of universal bank, So today bank is not only lending short term, but they are into insurance, they are into capital market service, they are into management of pension funds and variety of activities. So it's one of the aspects where the bank should look at, particularly COVID insurance. All of you must have heard about bank assurance. Yeah. So these type of new products, the bank should focus on. And one more aspect, which is very important nowadays, and I'm sure all the speaker must have emphasized that, and that is the digital banking. Because of the restrictions, the people prefer to do the business digitally or without contact, what is known as contactless banking or online banking or mobile banking or this stuff. So bank has to focus on that particular area so as to come out of this situation. So these are the 5-6 focus areas of the bank. And this slide will talk about what kind of action plan they should think of. So this slide is talking about action plan for protection of the business. Protecting business is top priority. Yeah. And for that purpose, the focus should be on the short-term planning. Why? Because in this kind of situation or this time, long-term planning is absolutely difficult. All of you know that whatever, even the government or the private business is planning, keeping into mind some long-term period, relatively long-term period, that also goes haywire. Because how this problem is developing and how long it will continue, nobody is having answer. So that's the reason banks should focus on the short-term planning, and the most important steps which they should take, most important action they should take is keeping a constant watch on asset quality to take timely action. It means the bank should not allow the asset quality to deteriorate, not allow the asset quality to fall. So that should be the focus area, and that should be the action plan for the bank, to my mind. Yeah. Then the next important action plan is deployment of excess liquidity. Now, this point also requires little elaboration. I think that also you must have read that banks are now having excess liquidity, bound to be because the investors are not sure about the capital market. There is a lot of volatility in capital market. The other avenues of investment is also affected because of the COVID problem. So the best and the safe method of parking your fund is the bank. So the people prefer to put their money into the bank. That is one of the reasons why the bank is having excess liquidity. And second reason is, as I was referring to a few minutes before, the reverse repo is already reduced by the Reserve Bank of India. So banks, instead of putting their money with the RBI, they are keeping themselves and thinking at present what to do with this excess liquidity. So this is one of the area where lot of study, lot of research and strategy bank need to decide, and bank need to think of how to deploy this excess liquidity in a remunerative way. So this is also one of the important action plan point. Then the next is expanding the digital banking that I already talked to you. And this is the need of the hour. Digital banking is bound to be growing, bound to prevail. And many people, they will prefer to do their banking business through this particular mode. So they have to make investment, they have to train the staff, they have to hire the staff who can help them to expand the digital banking. Of course, nowadays every bank is techno savvy, but still there are many small banks in India which has to do many things on this ground also. Yeah. Then the next two issues are also critical. One is the strengthening the risk management system. All of you know that banks are facing different types of risk. At present, the severe risk is the credit risk, and the liquidity risk, there is excess liquidity, and there is a credit risk is yet another risk. Nobody will talk about interest rate risk nowadays and reputation risk and other risk. But even then, for risk management, strengthening the risk management system, bank has to think of integrated risk management. Why? Because, these risks are interlinked. One risk is giving rise to another risk. And that's the reason the bank should focus and bank should take action on integrated risk management system. They have to strengthen their ELCO, what is known as Asset Liability Committee, and they need to strengthen this area as well. All right. Same way, one more important action plan is required, and that is protecting the health of the staff. Why? Because you see, this is a problem. COVID is a problem which is affecting everybody, and at such time, the efficiency of the bank staff, if you want to maintain, then the bank has to take care of the health of their staff. So whatever required measure when they come for the work, of course, the banks are working at below capacity nowadays. I mean, in the sense that they are not working with the full strength of the staff. And that is one of the reasons why it is affecting their productivity. They are not allowed to, the authority is not allowing banks to work with the full staff, and therefore it is affecting productivity. Now, in such time, if the health is affected, then that will also have severe impact. So these are few action plan for protecting the business. And this slide will talk about that bank is highly regulated sector. So what measures are taken by Reserve Bank of India to protect the bank? Yeah. So the first aspect, which is over here, is I already talked to you about liquidity infusion. Reserve Bank of India is infusing the liquidity by taking measures like, that is also covered in this slide, reduction in CRR. As you know, that cash reserve ratio is reduced, repo rate is also reduced, and even reverse repo rate is also reduced. So in this way, the Reserve Bank of India is trying to increase the liquidity with the bank. Yeah? Now, again, I may sound contradictory because in the earlier slide, I told you that excess liquidity, bank is facing excess liquidity. Now, why the Reserve Bank of India is increasing the liquidity of the bank? With the intention that bank should start lending. And when the bank will start lending, particularly working capital loan, at least to begin with, term loan will come subsequently, but at least to begin with working capital loan and personal loan and housing loan and these kind of stuff, so that, the economy will recover fast. And the challenge for the bank is when they start lending and when they increase their loan portfolio, there are two important challenges. And one is to ensure the quality of the assets that they are creating by expanding the loan portfolio. And second is adequate capital. So this way, that balancing the bank has to do. So Reserve Bank is taking the measures to increase the what you call, if I am to use some technical term, that is something called expansionary monetary policy. So the Reserve Bank of India has taken several measures whereby the monetary expansion should take place, and monetary policy transmission should take place, and the recovery of the economy from the bad time can be made quickly. Yeah. So for the government, and Reserve Bank of India, of course, is a policy making body. So for government, this balancing is very critical. On one hand, they have to ensure that the debt toll because of the COVID problem should be less, or it should be under control. Number of people affected by this problem is under control. At the same time, the economic activity should take place, and the country and the economy should recover fast. So in this balancing, the body like Reserve Bank of India is helping the government, right? And one more aspect, even that is also purely policy related matter, increasing the limit for marginal spending facility. So that is also with a view to increase the liquidity position and thereby adopting the expansionary monetary policy. In this slide, if you feel that I have used some technical jargon, then you can, of course, ask me the question. Okay. So this is as far as the banks are concerned. Now coming to NBFC. See, in country like India, NBFC also plays very important role. Why? Because ours is a country where number of banks, if you talk about, you may feel that, well, we have a large number of banks. But if you talk about the banking network, then it is not very high. I think, again, many of you must be knowing that India is a country of village. We have nearly 6 lakhs villages in the country. And number of branches of the bank is nearly 1,35,000. So, this one of the most critical aspect, what is known as mobilization of saving and capital formation. In the language of economics, we say capital formation and saving mobilization. So this process is affected because of the less coverage of the banking institution in the country. And that's the reason NBFC plays a very important role. And that's the reason NBFC is integral part of lending ecosystem in India. Yeah. There are a large number of small businessmen. There are a large number of farmers. There are a large number of even individuals. There are a large number of people who are borrowing microfinance. They don't have access to institutional kind of lending, like banks and all that. And that's the reason what happens. They have to depend on the local money lenders. They have to depend on non-institutional lending, and it has got its own ill effects. Yeah. So here comes the role of NBFCs. Yeah? So we have large number of NBFCs. If you talk about the registered NBFCs with Reserve Bank of India, it is around 9,000 NBFCs we have. So these NBFCs are playing very important role, particularly in the form of giving loan to MSME sector, retail sector, and personal loan to salaried class. So there are a large number of MSMEs. They are borrowing from NBFCs. Why they are borrowing? Because they don't have access to banks. There are retail sector. They are also borrowing from NBFC. They don't have access to bank. And why they don't have access to bank is altogether a separate discussion. It's an issue of separate discussion. Many of these borrowers are from unorganized sector, so they don't have proper record. Their credit rating would be difficult. Their credit assessment, all that would be difficult. And that's the reason, the big banks or so-called well-organized banks may not be interested in lending to these sector. And that's the reason they have to approach to small NBFCs. Yeah. So NBFCs is playing important role, but they are also affected because of the COVID problem. Now, how they are affected because of the COVID problem? So that is also covered in this slide. Their asset quality is also affected because whatever lending that these NBFCs have done to small business and retail sector, retail traders, etc., they are also not able to service their borrowing. So the asset quality of NBFC is also affected. Not only that, their business volume is affected, just like bank, their business volume is also affected. And that in turn is affecting the profitability of NBFC. So for them also, survival will be the issue, particularly for small NBFC. Survival will be the issue. Another major issue, the first point, if you see here, debt servicing by NBFC. I'm sure even that also many of you must be knowing. What is the sources of finance for NBFC? From where NBFC raise the fund? They can raise the fund from the market. They can accept deposit. Of course, they are not allowed to accept demand deposit, but there are some NBFCs, they are accepting time deposit, right? So, and another important source is they are borrowing from the commercial banks. Yeah. Now, since the government has put up moratorium and government has given relaxation for servicing of the borrowing from the bank, so naturally NBFC will also get that benefit. But that benefit is restricted only for those borrowings which they did from the bank. But NBFCs are also raising the fund, as I told you, from the market by issuing bonds, by issuing commercial paper, and accepting time deposit. So servicing of these kind of debt instrument is a big pressure and a big challenge for NBFC in this tough time. Yeah. So this is how not only banks but even the NBFCs also affected. And this slide is giving you the idea about how the impact is there on NBFC on one hand, and which NBFCs are having relatively lower impact. So the major impact is because of recovery of loan, and due to less recovery of loan which NBFC has given to various borrowers, there is a vulnerability of cash flow. The cash flow of the NBFC is affected. Same problem, just like NPA in a bank. Yeah. And because of that, the non-performing assets of the NBFCs has also gone up, right? And as I was telling you, the traditional source of finance for NBFC, that is borrowing from the banks, is also getting dried up. So as it is mentioned in this slide, that banks lending to NBFC will also dry up because bank will be cautious. Bank has to be careful about maintaining the asset quality. So bank will also be reluctant to lend to NBFC. And because of this, the liquidity issue the NBFCs will face. And all of you know that even before Corona problem, the NBFC was facing the liquidity issue. So again, it will add to that problem. But those NBFCs which are geographically diverse and they have a geographically diverse portfolio, they will have relatively less impact. Why? Because as I was telling you when I started talking about NBFC, that many of them are found in small town, many of them are found in rural areas. Mostly the borrowers are the farmers, borrowers are the small retailers and the small scale industries, agro-based industries. Yeah. So those NBFCs which are geographically diverse, they are going to face relatively less problem to my mind. But those who are focusing on a particular sector in big cities, on industries, they are going to have a severe problem. Yeah. So this is with respect to NBFC. Now this slide is talking about impact on insurance sector. When you talk about BFSI, naturally it covers insurance sector also. So just like the other business, even insurance companies are also finding that their business is affected, right? You may be feeling that now more and more people will go for health insurance, and health insurance with the condition that it should cover Corona expenses also in case the person has to incur. But then that will be post-Corona, or it is just started, But suppose you look at some of the statistics which you get from authority like IRDA, then you will get the information that nearly 32% decline in the premium on life insurance in just April 2020. So this tells us that how the insurance companies are also affected. The business of the insurance company is also affected, and it has affected to such an extent that life insurance companies, they are planning to shut down their branches. Nearly 6 to 8% of the branches they are planning to shut down. So definitely this will also have impact on the economy and on the BFSI sector. And that's the reason the new mantra for insurance sector now is focusing again on technology, and that is emphasis is given on online sale. So currently online sale of insurance is very less. It is less than 10%. But now slowly the online sale of the insurance is also rising up. And therefore insurance company should, and they have already started focusing on the technology, servicing through technology, providing services to the insured through technology, expanding business through technology. And here also technology came into the picture. Yeah. So insurance sector, I have not covered more because I was told that on the second or third day, you had a dedicated discussion on insurance. So this is how the banks and the NBFCs, these are the two important sector which I have covered. Yeah. Now, couple of slides I wanted to discuss with you because these are the special challenges. So what are the challenges for the economy as a whole? Where your financial market will also come, your insurance sector will also come, entire BFSI sector and other sector will also come. So couple of major problem, post-COVID problem or challenges rather, that the economy is facing, and that is with respect to mobility of labor and supply of labor. Now, all of you must have seen that COVID has created a big problem of labor migration, and labor have started leaving the place of their work and they have started moving to their hometown. And this is a big problem in big city like Mumbai, for example. I'm from Mumbai. So Mumbai, Maharashtra, all these states are facing a huge problem of labor. Why? Because there are so many migrated laborers which were there here in working in various industries. And due to this COVID problem, they have migrated back to their place, you know, their villages. Now they are not likely to come back very quickly, you see. So that's the reason the industrial production, the business activity definitely will have severe problem. If I give you some statistics relating to Maharashtra, nearly 44,000 SMEs in Maharashtra, because of the labor migration to their native place, they are facing the problem and they are facing shortage of 9 lakhs workers. You know? So you can imagine when there is a direct impact on the production and the economic activities of 44,000 units, and I'm talking about only one state. You know, so this will be a big challenge. How to bring back those labor and how to ensure that labor that their health will be taken care of and they will not have any issue and all that. So this corona has created, this is one of the big challenge, post-COVID challenge it will be. Yeah. Similarly, recovery of consumption. As I told you in the second slide while explaining the components of GDP, consumption is one of the most important consumption. Consumption should increase. And our economy, as you know, that mainly depending on domestic consumption because of the large population and rising income level. So recovery of consumption is also a big issue. At present, what you find, if you look at the composition, mostly consumption of basic necessities. Yeah, because people are storing the basic necessities due to uncertainties. And because of the sentiment plays important role here. Yeah. But consumption of other than basic necessities, revival of the consumption of is also one of the big challenge. Today, for example, grocery shops and the milk shops, they are doing business. But what about the other retail business? What about the other consumption? So that is going to be a big challenge. Unless this problem is under control or reduced substantially, I think it is difficult to have recovery in consumption. Same way, capital market volatility. Yesterday, you must have heard the experts about this topic. So this is also one of the big challenge. Of course, capital market is always volatile. I have got some different views about capital market. All of you may not agree with that. Capital market is always volatile. It is not that this is due to this problem, but of course, because of the problem, the volatility is increased, and there is high amount of uncertainty. There is a big problem with respect to attracting the fund, with respect to primary market, with respect to secondary market, with respect to valuation, all sorts of problems. The COVID is already created, and this will be a challenge to have stability in the capital market. Will be a big challenge for the regulator and the government. Yeah. Similarly, international trade and international investment. Now, as far as the trade is concerned, few minutes before I told you that more than 50%, slightly more than 50% fall in the export and import you are noticing in last 3 months. So revival of the international trade will also a big problem, because this COVID problem is faced by the entire world. It is not something unique only to India or something like that. Yeah? So international trade is affected, and in such time, even international investment is also affected because of the uncertainty, because of the sentimental factors, because of the often change in the policy relating to international capital movement and international trade. Government has no other option but to change the policy also, because of this environment. So even international investment is also affected. Here also some statistics are available that in last 3 months, around $16 billion worth investment is taken back by the foreign institutional investors and portfolio investors and all that, And all this will have again impact on the capital market, because our capital market is highly sensitive with respect to the foreign funds. So this is a big challenge. Yeah. And another big challenge is digitization, and particularly efficiency with respect to digitization. See, all of we are talking about digitization, and rather lot of talk we are doing about digitization nowadays. Let us say I am from educational institutions, so online classes and online exams and online administrative works and all that. But infrastructure with respect to digitization is a big problem in our country. You see, India is not only Mumbai or Delhi or Bangalore. Real India is lying in the villages. As I said, India is a country of villages. Now, forget about network, forget about the facility of computer and network and all that. Even power and electricity is not there. In countryside, if you go, there is no power, there is no electricity. So to what extent you will depend upon digitization is a big problem. I'll give you a simple example. If you just visit outskirts of Mumbai. Now, Mumbai is one of the big international city, but if you just go to the outskirts of Mumbai, something like just 80, 90 kilometers away from Mumbai, there is a problem of network. This, internet, problem of internet. So how you will expect that in a rural area of a certain state, these kind of facilities are available, and you will be able to do business, you will be able to cover the people, you will be able to do banking, you will be able to educate the people through digitization. So huge amount of investment is required on the part of the government on creating required infrastructure if this digitization has to be successful. Yeah. But of course, still at least tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities are already covered under the network, but these cities have problems relating to power, uninterrupted power. So this is also one of the big challenge. And of course, as I am telling you 2-3 times, I already told you, business related government policies. Even the government will not be able to do planning in an appropriate way because of uncertainties and because of this challenge. So these are some of the challenges which business in general, economy at large is going to face post-COVID. Yeah. So this is the one part of my presentation. Now something which I wanted to talk to you, which is for the interest of the students, that what the student should do in this time. Yeah? We have seen what the economy should do, what the bank should do, what the NBFC should do. That is all fine. But now what the student should do. Yeah? So, for a student, it is but obvious that their concern is to get good education and to get a job. There is nothing wrong in that, right? But dear friends, dear students, as you know, that job market would be very tough post-COVID, and it will be tougher than what we have seen, what you have seen in after 2008 financial crisis. Yeah. Why? Because this is an issue which is at global level. Repeatedly, I am telling you. So the student should know that which are the sectors where there is a better job prospects, where there is a better possibility of getting the job, and which sector will have relatively less job prospects. So I'm sure by now you must have done your homework and you must be ready with this answer. But even then, this slide I have put up, I know that current generation students are techno savvy. So they do a lot of Google search and they collect a lot of information. Before, as a teacher, we say something in the class, they are aware of it. So I'm sure you must be knowing. But even then, this slide, as a part of my presentation, I have put up that the worst affected industries with respect to job prospects are tourism and transport. Why? Because nobody will dare to go out in this time unless the things will settle down. So there is going to be an effect at least for a couple of years. That's what my feeling is, at least for 2 years. Right? Hospitality industry, same way. Event management, because this gathering and all that is creating corona problem more severe. And the sports events, these areas, if you are thinking of making the career, tourism, transport, hospitality, events, sports, etc., then you have to be a little careful. Whereas, if you look at the industries like techno-based industries, particularly fintech, as I was talking to you, that digitization is the time nowadays. We all have to be techno-savvy and digital. And I also told you that infrastructure is a problem, but that is mainly with respect to the coverage in the countryside and the small towns and the rural areas. Yeah? So fintech is one of the area where there is a good job prospects that you can consider, that you can think of. Similarly, healthcare is yet another area because this is a problem which is relating to health and medicine. So healthcare related industries, I think there will be a good job prospects. Similarly, consulting firm. Why? Because so many businesses going to be affected because of this corona problem. So whether you are a small consulting agency, whether you are working in a small consultancy agency or a large consulting agency, definitely they are going to get good business. And finally, agriculture and related activities. I do not mean to say farming directly as such, but all those activities and all those industries which are agro-based, agro-dependent, and relating to agriculture sector. So these sectors are having better job prospects, and the sectors which are lifted on the left-hand side, these sectors will have relatively less job prospects post-COVID. I mean, when you will pass out, irrespective of whether you are in first year or second year. Yeah. So what you have to do, considering this fact, what you have to do, you have to plan accordingly. You have to plan your future, keeping in mind this particular aspect. And don't be under the impression that this is all short term, because it is going to continue at least for a couple of years. And for a couple of years, there is going to be a surge in the competition. Yeah. So be ready to face tough competition in the job market. And how you will face this tough competition, that answer you will get in my presentation. See, you have to get rid of various types of distraction. This is something which is most important. Yeah, particularly social media. See, social media is having its positive impact, its negative impact also. But don't be fully engrossed into social media, because there is going to be a lot of distraction because of that reason. So you should be very clear with your focus, with your objective, with your aim, and you should concentrate on that rather than getting distracted by various activities, these kind of things. Yeah. And most important during this time is your mental and physical health both. Yeah? And for that purpose, positive thinking is something which is most important. So always be positive. Don't get scared that if you will not get the job in one particular year, what you will be able to do in future. It is not like that. As I always tell my students, you students have two big strengths at your advantage. And these two strengths I have covered, that is degree and age. If you have a good degree, if you have a good degree from good institution, then you need not worry at all. And second, all of you are young, so you need not worry at all. Why you need not worry? Because you can afford to take the risk. At young age, you can afford to take risk. See, at the age of 40, or if you cross 40, then it is difficult for you to take the risk. But here you can take this. What type of risk I'm talking about? Let us say, for example, you are getting a job which is of not your area, which is of not your specialization, which is of not your liking. But even then, you should take it, because when you leave the campus, you should leave the campus with the job. There is always scope to change the line. There is always scope to change the industry, change the job in future. Is that this is your last job? Don't worry about that. You are young people and you have with you good degree. So always you will be in demand. These type of phases comes in the life. Of course, this phase is going to continue, as I said, for a couple of years, but there is always scope to change your job, to change the industry. And this is what you need to understand well, and you have to prepare yourself. Always be fit, take healthy food, do exercise, proper sleep management, proper time management, proper anger management. This is very, very critical in the new generation. You know, you need to learn anger management, time management, sleep management. Spend some time for hobby. It will give you a lot of recreation. So you try to keep yourself fit mentally as well as physically, and take the challenge. You know, no doubt the survey is indicating that 13%. This point is given in the slide. You can see that when the survey was conducted in the March, 13% of MBA students were showing serious concern about the job, and it has increased to 53% at present in the June. Yeah, so it is bound to be. Certainly, you will worry, but as I told you, that you have two strengths with you, that is degree and age. So you need not worry about that. All right. And what kind of traits you need to have? Yeah. What kind of quality you need to possess? This slide will also help you to prepare yourself to navigate from this crisis. So if you look at this slide, the first and foremost is the self-awareness. Yeah? You should know first what you are, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses. That you should know well, and always try to overcome your weaknesses. Always try to alter yourself in such a way that your weaknesses you will be able to convert into your strength. So that is something which is most important. Self-awareness is very important. And here I'll tell you, here your family, your teacher, the people to whom you trust, your mentor, they can help you a lot. So you have to interact with them, you have to talk to them, take their guidance, think yourself. This is all very, very important. Thinking is also very, very important. Yeah? Another important traits that is required to navigate and survive in this difficult time is adaptability and resilience. Yeah? You have to get yourself adapted. For example, as you know that because of this COVID problem, most of the industries will ask you to work from home. Now, there are many people, they are not comfortable to work from home, but they have to adapt themselves. Yeah? You have to work in the team. You have to work from home, and that too in team. So you have to learn all these skills. Yeah? Suppose you are in a higher position. Let's say you are put up in some higher position, relatively. Immediately you may not be, but let us say relatively higher position. Then how you will be able to function as a leader from distance place? You know, because you will be working from the home. Yeah. How you will be able to work with limited resources? You will not have all the facilities which you will get when you are working in a physical office. You know. So these kind of adaptability and resilience you need to develop, and that is something which is very, very important. Okay. Same way, pragmatic approach. You have to be proactive and pragmatic for everything that you do, apart from your study, even when you get the job. Yeah. And another important traits that you need is learning. So here I would like to tell you something more that every speaker must have talked about that you have to do reskilling, you have to learn new skill. I'm sure all speaker must have talked about that. Yeah. So your degree is your basic qualification, correct? But over and above your degree, you need to have required skill set in the new environment and require additional knowledge also you need to have. So depending upon the sector where you want to make the career, you need to do some certification course, you need to do some short courses, but this is all over and above your basic degree. Mind you, that is what I am telling you. Yeah. And nowadays, all these facilities are available online. All these facilities are available at low cost. So you should take advantage of that. See, those who want to specialize in finance, they are all aware of NSC certification, BSc certification, all that you are aware of, right? But something like even the courses like Coursera, I'm sure that also many of you must be knowing. Coursera is offering different types of courses, and all these courses are from different field. If you are engineering students, then also it is available. If you are marketing student, finance students, fine art students, all types of courses they are offering, online courses, so that you can think of, and that kind of skill you have to acquire. Similarly, at global level, that is also online teaching. That also I would suggest. There is something called OLLI. Probably this you might not have heard. OLLI. There is something called Osher Lifetime Learning Institute. OSHER. Osher Lifetime Learning Institute. So they are also offering different types of courses. Yeah? And even these courses are well recognized, and this will give you edge over the others who have not done these kind of courses or additional courses. Please don't misunderstand me. I am not here marketing Coursera or Osher, but this is some additional skill that you need to acquire. And another important thing is digital savvy. This is something which is most critical. And let me tell you, this is not only applicable to you, this is applicable to everybody in this new environment. Because the coming time is such where everything will be digital, right? So even for traditional faculty, for example, you take my case, I am a traditional blackboard and the chalk type of traditional faculty. So for me also, I have to learn the new environment of technology, how to take online classes, how to conduct online meeting, all that thing I have to learn, right? Even if there are grandparents at your home, even they also have to learn to transfer money from one bank account to another bank account. So we have to do this. So you have to be digital savvy. As I said a few minutes before, that new generation is already digital savvy. But whatever development that is taking place, all that you should learn, like artificial intelligence and virtual reality and augmented reality, these are the words which are nowadays very generously used by all the speakers. And every time we talk about IT and technology and all that, right? But then we have to learn this. Yeah, of course, I do agree. I have got my own views about that 100% IT is also not successful and not advisable, sorry to say. But to a large extent, IT revolution has already taken place. So we have to keep ourselves up to date. And as you know that learning is a lifelong activity, learning never ends. It's a lifelong activity. So you have to keep yourself up to date. You have to keep learning the things. And this is what you need to do to navigate this particular time. Same way, one more thing which is very important, and that is communication skill. Yeah. Even this also I have observed from the students of my college and other institute where I'm associated with. If your communication skill is good, then also it will give you good mileage in your what you call real experience and real life when you are exposed to this real world to get the job or to survive, to have a progress in your professional career. at every place you need to have good communication skill. So that also one of the area that you have to look at. Yeah. So learning, ultimately, the moral of the story is there should be a constant learning. And as I was telling you, learning is never ending process. And this is what you should focus. All right. One more thing, let me talk to you, because even we had an interaction with your dean madam, and I got this also one of the aspect to cover. You see, particularly those students who want to make career in banking and finance. Fortunately, in our country, there are ample number of degrees which are available, which is specially for banking and financial sector. You know, something like you can do MBA in finance, that is very common, but MBA something in banking, MBA in insurance, MBA in financial market, MBA in financial sector, right? I'm sure many of you must be knowing, because you must be doing a lot of, internet search for this. For example, Bombay Stock Exchange is also having their own training center and their own institute. There is something called BS Institute. They are offering different short-term, medium-term courses. Private universities are also offering courses on banking, finance, and financial market. So keep yourself up to date and keep learning. That is what the point that I want to make. And finally, I want to say, I want to talk to you. I want to tell, rather end my discussion with one of the quote by Mahatma Gandhi, that learn as if you were to live forever. Mahatma Gandhi used to say, learn as if you were to live forever. So learning is never ending activity. You have to keep learning. And he has also said, live as if you were to die tomorrow. You have to live the life in such a way as if you will die tomorrow. But learning is to be done in such a way that you have to live forever. So with this, I will end my discussion, and I will show you the last and the most important slide. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
For providing such wonderful insights and sharing your experiences with us. Really, we feel very fortunate that we got a chance to listen to you today. In fact, each day of this conclave gave us once in a lifetime opportunity to listen to some eminent personalities from the industry, academia, and the field of research. Although not everyone is present today, but still, on behalf of the participants and myself, of course, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you and to thank all the speakers of this conclave who shared their knowledge with us and created a lot of value to this conclave. Now, at the end, I would like to invite Dr. Sangeeta Trehanji, the chairperson and convener of this conclave, to give her concluding remarks to this conclave and to give away a vote of thanks to Dr. Pankaj Trivedi ji as well. Over to you, ma'am. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Param, and thank you, Professor Trivedi, for your very lucid talk and integrative session, which synthesized the discourse and gave comprehensive advice to our audience. Now, I retrospectively look at the past 4 days with gratitude. Today marks the culmination of this 5-day confluence of industry and academia. As you know, the event was flagged off last Saturday by Dr. Sunil Kumar Garg, the Honorable Registrar of J.C. Bose University of Science and Technology. I take this opportunity to thank him again for making time to join us to inaugurate the event on day 1. We thank the Chairman of Board of Governors of SDIAT, Mr. S.K. Sachdeva, for his constant patronage and guidance to us in all that we do. I would also like to thank my colleague, friend, and guide, Dr. Mohammad Noor Deshmukh, Principal, SDIAT, for providing support as needed. A big thanks to all our industry partners, co-organizers, and institutions providing speakers, namely HDFC Asset Management Company Limited, HDFC Life, NIIT Limited, Sanguine Capital Financial Services, Motilal Oswal Investment Services, KJ Somaya Institute, and All India Management Association, Center for Management Education. Thanks to all the speakers, Mr. Alok Shivpurkar on day 1, and all the distinguished speakers on all the subsequent days, Mr. Vibhash on day 2, Mr. S. Devasilan and Mr. Amit Doshi on day 3, Mr. Jayant and Mr. Rohit Gupta on day 4, and our distinguished and learned speaker, Professor Pankaj Trivedi, today. Our co-organizers, Faridabad Management Association President, Mr. Abhay Kapoor, and Executive Director, Mr. Tyagarajan, stood with us at every step in organization of this event. Thanks to both of you. On the SDIET side, I am proud of my organizing committee, comprising faculty of Department of Management Studies, especially the 2 co-conveners of this event, Mr. Paramjit Singh Ahuja and Mr. Mohit Kapil. I always found my zeal and enthusiasm reflected in both of them, and each initiative was met with supportive action from both of them to bring it to fruition. I heartily appreciate their competence, their dedication, and attention to detail. I would also like to mention the help rendered by Ms. Preeti Sindhwani, our student volunteer, who helped us with live streaming this webinar through YouTube. Thank you, Preeti. Finally, and most importantly, I extend a hearty thanks to all the dear students, faculty members, scholars, interns, executives, and all participants who joined us in large numbers on all days consistently. Thank you for your time and patient listening. You've been very responsive and interactive through the chat and the feedback forms submitted. Your feedback is valuable to us to keep improving our logistics and content. At the outset, we promised 3 takeaways, which I know have been or are going to be fulfilled. Now, but beyond these takeaways, some very thought-provoking deliberations took place during the course of the past 5 days. Our knowledgeable speakers talked about the game-changing trends and developments that the BFSI industry is going through, the ongoing digital transformation, changed or changing business models, emergence of sectorless digital economies, automation, emergence of APIs, trends towards open banking, and possibilities of generating new revenue streams through innovative offerings brought in by fintechs, and so on and so forth. They also put the current economic crises in historical perspective and analyze the macroeconomic environment of the industry in the short term, medium term, as well as the long term. The speakers also dwelt on how the students, scholars, and young aspirants wanting to join or grow in this industry respond to the current trends and situations in terms of developing and adopting appropriate skills, attitudes, and practices, upskilling, cross-skilling ourselves, etc. Information and insight was provided regarding the various learning pathways and learning program and offerings, not only for students, but also for working professionals as well by Dr. Trivedi also today. Now, I would be failing in my duty with respect to this national conclave come FDP if I do not deliberate on certain aspects and challenges that exist at the national level today. So before we close, I would like to give you some action items or at least some food for thought. So I would be dwelling on some issues facing our country or action areas for the youngsters and academicians. Some of them were pointed out by the keynote speaker on day 1, Mr. Alok Shivpurkar. He gave 3 KRAs to academics, one of which was that academia should focus on action research, on solving people's and countries' problems. Now, I am going to add a few more. So first of all, there is this digital divide. So as you know, although the digital savvy customers who are comfortable with self-help options, it's growing by the day, but digital divide is still a reality, and a large part of India is still underserviced or unserviced, I would say. Like Dr. Trivedi also pointed out today that there are power shortages, internet connectivity issues, and other infrastructural challenges in large parts of the country. Secondly, many of the new technologies like voice-based chatbots, then conversational AI, APIs, these are all in their infancy, or what we call POC stage. And the associated services are just evolving. The third challenge that I would like to point out is with respect to data privacy and protection. We need to put in place transparent, trustworthy, and reliable systems of secure transactions across multiple intermediaries, including cross-border transactions. The next issue is with respect to regulation of the BFSI sector, which also Dr. Trivedi pointed out a little bit. Now, actually, this is the case worldwide. There are no standard regulatory frameworks established globally. Various governments are worldwide, they are still trying to understand the evolution of BFSI. And the policy is more or less reactionary. In our own country, regulation is still evolving. And in fact, our country is a developing country, and this context actually throws up additional challenges. All of you know, whenever we have to adopt a new business model or transform an industry or do change management, it inevitably involves scaling down or rehabilitation of existing branches, assets, and staff. And as you know, it is easier said than done. Such physical processes of development are very slow by nature and even slower and complex in our country with our own socio-political context, multi-party democracy, the kind of political discourse in the country, etc. And last but not the least, the challenge is the challenge of shortage of new age skills. In fact, I was reading a report recently where they had brought out skill gaps within existing in-house IT teams of organizations. And on the other hand, we all know that technical and higher education in the country has several quality concerns, and there are academia industry gaps. Now, in such a scenario, it's imperative to deliberate on all the desirable skills, how to bridge the skill gap, and how to develop them through formal or informal education. So I'm glad that Dr. Trivedi and before him, other speakers as well, touched upon this very important point and gave you comprehensive advice on how to go about it. So not only should we be aware of all these issues that I pointed out, the issues that face our country and our people, but actually I urge the audience to make them the theme of your inquiry, your research, and your action. And with these words, I'm glad that this conclave has given some food for thought for attendees from all walks of life, whether it's faculty or academic leaders or research scholars, students, trainees, interns, executives, and industry people. I'm sure you found value for your time. So once again, I thank one and all, and I wish you all the very best for your health and life in general.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for your nice words. Now, last but not the least, I would like to request Tyagarajan ji, Executive Director from Faridabad Management Association. Here, I would like to say, sir, it is the FMA's continuous support. Believe me, without the support of FMA, this conclave shouldn't have been at this level where it is today. So over to you, sir, to give away a vote of thanks to our speaker of the day and the entire conclave.
Good evening, our guest of honor of the evening, Professor Pankaj Deshpande of KJ Somaiya Institute, Bombay. Mr. S.K. Sachdeva, Chairman, Board of Governors, SDIET, and Dr. Mohammad Noor Deshmukh, Principal, and Dr. Sangeeta, Dean, and dearest audience. It is indeed a great privilege to propose a vote of thanks. Mr. Abhay Kapoor also joins me in proposing vote of thanks. Today's session was really marvelous, and there was a great learning with lots of in-depth insights given by Dr. Pankaj Dwivedi.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Dwivedi.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
We would like to call this a unique national conclave, and it is the first of its kind which has been held. And congrats to FMA and SDIT for this. There has been a high quality presentation on all the 5 days. Well done, SDIT. We thank SDIT for collaborating with us, with Faridabad Management Association. Thanks to our industry partners, and also special thanks to IMA and also YMCA University. Thanks Dr. Sangeeta Trehan and team who have worked smart and hard to make this event a grand success. Special thanks to smart associate professors Mohit Kapil and Paramjit Singh Ahuja, who have made it possible. Thanks a lot to the participants from the various corporate sectors, entrepreneurs, consultants, faculties, and dear students for sparing their valuable time for this great learning. Thanks a lot. We would like to have this type of conclave again and again. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. Now, last but not the least, I would like to thank each and everyone present here. So you can please fill the feedback form. The links are there. There might be some problem with the overflowing of the feedback form, but you can fill the form. You will surely get the reward. I am keeping this meeting open for the next 5 more minutes. Request to Mohit sir if he can share the link again. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being such a supporting audience throughout the conclave. Thanks.